Hi, this is 8th grade, Chapter 1, Lesson 2. We are learning about how to solve multi-step equations. So in the last section, we solved just single-step equations. You just got x by itself, just doing one step. But here, we've got a few things we have to do first before we can get x all by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and do example 1. I'm on page 12 in the book. Now, the best way I can describe this is we're still trying to get x by itself. But to do that, we have a few things we have to do first. And I love how I was given this description of you do like opposite of order of operations. So like in order of operations, we know we usually do multiplication and division before we do addition and subtraction. But when you're solving multi-step equations like this, you're doing the order of operations backwards. So instead of doing the getting rid of 1.5 with division, instead of doing that first, we have to get rid of this guy, the addition problem first, okay? So same as last section, we still do the opposite of what it is, okay? So it is positive 15 because that's a plus sign, right? So it's positive. The opposite of positive 15 is negative 15. So we're going to subtract 15 from both halves of the equation. Okay, 15, take away 15 is 0, it's gone. Bring down what we didn't use, 1.5x and the equal sign. 24, take away 15. Let's see, that's 1, that'd be a 9, 0. Okay, so it's going to be a 9. Okay, now we can go ahead and do like we did last section where we want to get x all by itself. So it's being multiplied by 1.5, so the opposite of that is to divide by 1.5. All right, now 1.5 over 1.5, that's one whole, so we can just cross that out, it's done. X equals, now I'm never allowed to have a decimal in the denominator, so let's kick him out one space. Boop. But if I kick it out one space there, to make 15, I have to kick out my imaginary decimal right here, one space as well. And that extra loop, we put a 0 for 90. So now I have 90 divided by 15. And that actually divides perfectly to 6. So my answer is 6. We can double check that by putting 6 back in for the x. So that would be 1.5 times 6, which is 9. 9 plus 15 is 24. Okay, let's do some more examples together. Let's go do number 1, 2, and 3. So I still want to get z by itself, but we have to do the opposite of the order of operations. So order of operations says multiplication, division first, then addition, subtraction. We're going to do the opposite of that. So we're going to get rid of the 1 first, okay? It is a positive 1, so the opposite would be to subtract 1. That way it cancels out. Subtract 1 from both sides. Those cancel out. 7 minus 1 is 6, so I'm going to write everything that I haven't used. Now how do I get z by itself? I do the opposite of what's happening to it. It is being multiplied by negative 3, so the opposite would be to divide by negative 3. Do that to both sides. Negative 3 over negative 3 is one whole, so those cancel out. Z equals, now I've got a positive number divided by a negative number. There's only one negative sign, which means my answer is still going to be negative, and it's going to be 2, because 6 divided by 3 is 2. You can double check that by plugging negative 2 in for z. Negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. Let's do number 2. Remember, I'm going to do the reverse of the order of operations. So I'm going to get rid of that minus 9 first. The opposite of negative 9, or minus 9, is add 9. Okay? These cancel out to a 0, so I'm left with 1/2 x. And then negative 25 plus 9. Signs are different, so we subtract. 25 minus 9 is 16. We take the sign of the bigger number. 25 is bigger than 9, and it happens to be negative. So my answer will be negative 16. Now, we talked about this last section. how do I get a fraction that's being multiplied to a variable away? Well, technically you'd be dividing by a half on both sides, but we know we have a little shortcut. You don't have to divide. You can do the multiplicative inverse first. So just multiply by the reciprocal, which is 2 over 1. Okay, those would cancel out. Make 1 over, 2 over 2, which is 1. So now if I do it to one side, though, I have to do it to the other. Now I'm not going to write it as 2 over 1 because 2 over 1 is the same as just 2. So I'm going to say it's just times 2. Now I've got x equals negative 16 times 2. I've got one negative sign, so I know my answer is going to be negative. 16 times 2 is just like saying 16 plus 16, right? Which is 32. And that is my answer. I can plug that back in for x as well. Negative 32 times a half is the same thing as saying negative 32 divided by 2, which we found out was 16. However, it's going to be negative 16 because I've got a negative times a positive. Negative 16 minus 9, signs are the same, so we just add. 16 plus 9 is 25, and we keep the sign, so it'd be negative 25. Let's do 3. Drag this sheet of paper up a little bit more. Maybe I'll do one. Here we go. Okay. Remember, I've got to do the reverse order of operations on here. However, I see something that we didn't have before. 2 variables. They're the same variable, which means they are like terms. I can combine like terms first, and I highly suggest you do that. Negative 4n minus 8n. That's the same thing as just saying negative 4n plus negative 8n. Signs are the same, so we just add. 4 plus 8, we got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, so it'd be negative 12n, plus bring down the rest we haven't used. Okay? Now this problem looks like these ones over here, where I've got to get rid of my 17 first. Do the opposite of what it is, so I'm going to subtract 17 to both sides. Negative 12n equals 23 minus 17 is 6. Divide by negative 12 to get that away from the n. I know 6 over 12 is a half because, half of 12 is 6. So n equals, we'll cancel those out right now, n equals negative 1/2. And that's my answer. So that's the first page of this section, and then the next examples, they're just adding more and more steps in there just to see what you can do. So let's go ahead and do this example real quick. I've got 2 times, parentheses, 1 minus 5x, parenthesis, plus 4 equals negative 8. Now you guys know that in the order of operations, not reverse order of operations, but in the order of operations, we always do parentheses first. Is there anything I truly can do, though, in those parentheses? Well, not really, because they're not like terms. However, I do have a 2 being multiplied to the parentheses, so I know that I can do the distributive property and fling that guy through there via multiplication. So let's do that. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times negative 5x is going to be negative 10x. 2 times 5 is 10. Keep your negative sign. Keep your x. Now bring down the stuff we haven't used. We haven't used the plus 4 or the equals negative 8. Okay. Now just like the problem we just did, I see like terms. Not when it comes to my x's, but when it comes to my plain old integers, right? I've got 2 plus 4. A lot of kids will say, but Ms. Ringler, aren't we going to say 2 minus 4? Well, no, guys, because that minus sign is actually the 10s, right? That's actually negative 10x. So don't think of that 2 and that minus being connected. They're not. It's actually the 10 and the minus that are connected, okay? So it's going to be 2 plus 4. 2 plus 4 is 6. So now I can say 6, and now bring down the rest of the stuff we haven't used. Minus 10x equals negative 8. Now we're going to do the reverse order of operations to get the x alone. The first thing I need to do is get that 6 out of there. Now, once again, a lot of kids are going to say, okay, well, it's being subtracted by 6, right? So then the opposite would be to add 6 to both sides. However, remember, that subtraction symbol is actually a negative symbol for him. 6 is not connected to the minus, okay? 6 is positive. We have to do the opposite of that, which is negative 6, or, subtract 6. Now if I subtract 6, do you see how these ones cancel out, which is what we want? So now I have negative 10x equals, signs are the same, so I just add. 8 plus 6 is 14, and they're both negative, so I'm going to keep the sign of negative 14. We're almost there. Now I need to divide by negative 10 to get x by itself. Those cancel out. X equals, now a negative over a negative is a positive, right? And 14 divided by 10, you just move the decimal place over 1 to the right over here, to the left, boop. Okay, so it's going to be positive 1.4. And there's my answer. Lots of steps on that one, right? Let's review. First, we distributed. Then we added like terms. Then we got rid of the 6. Then we got rid of our negative 10. Lots of steps. That's why it's called multi-step equations, okay? Let's do one more example. Ooh, these shapes ones. Yes, these shapes ones are super important. I believe they're on your first quiz. So let's go do one of them. Let's do number 5. It says, find the variable, then find all the angle measures. Now, they were super nice to us, and they told us right now that the sum of the angles is 540 degrees, which means this plus this plus this plus this plus this will equal 540, okay? All we need to do is make one giant long equation that equals 540. I like to start in the bottom and work around clockwise, so we're going to start with this angle first. It is 2b minus 90. Now, if you see something, I ignored the parentheses because technically, is there anything I can do in those parentheses? No. So I just ignored them, okay? Now, I'm going to say it's that angle plus this angle, 3/2 b, plus this angle up here, which is b, plus this angle, which is b plus 45, plus this angle. And it all equals 540 degrees. Okay. Now, a lot of kids will panic at the sight of that. They'll think, oh my gosh, that's the longest equation I've ever had to solve. But don't worry, I see a lot of like terms. I'm going to highlight my like terms for you. I see a 2b, I see a 3/2 b, I see a b and a b. Those are my like terms for the b's. Now I see some like terms for the plain old integers. I've got negative 90, 45, 90. Okay, so let's just focus on the b's first. 2b plus 3/2 b plus b plus b. Well, okay, this b and this b, that's 2b. 2b and another 2b, that's 4b. Now, guys, I know that 3/2 is the same thing as 1 and 1/2, okay? So can't I just say that's 4 plus 1.5, which is 5.5 b? That works. Now I'm done with my b's. Let's go focus on the green integers. Now, the first thing I saw, which I'm hoping you guys notice as well, is I have negative 90 plus 90. Those are opposites, which means that's going to equal 0, okay? Which leaves me just with 45. So I'm going to say 5/2 b plus 45 equals 540. This looks so much nicer now, doesn't it? Do the opposite of the order of operations, which means I'm going to subtract 45 first. That gets rid of that. 5.5 b equals 540 minus 45 is 495. Okay, now how do I get 5.5 b away from b? 5.5 away from b, I divide by 5.5. Now, I'm going to do something sneaky. I'm going to change 5.5 from fraction to decimal. Just because I know that it's easier for me to divide with decimals, okay? Now, that's the same thing, so that's why it's okay. Those would cancel out to 1, which just leaves me with a b. 495 divided by 5.5. Kick that guy out once, move him over one more. So it's actually 4,950 divided by 55. When you do that, you get 90. Now we're only halfway there. This is a big problem, guys. I don't just want to know what b equals. I want to list all of the angles, right? So I know b equals 90. Let's go plug that in for all these angles. I'm going to start again back down here at my bottom. So I've got 2 times 90 minus 90. Well, guys, 2 times 90 is just the same thing as 90 plus 90. So if I said 90 plus 90 minus 90, isn't that just 90? Right? Okay, so I'm going to say the first angle is 90 degrees, comma. The next one is 3 halves times 90. Now we said 3 halves is the same thing as 1.5, 1.5 times 90 is 135, comma. Okay, now the top one is easy. It's just b. We just plug in 90, so it's 90. And then the next one is going to be 90 plus 45, which guess what? That's 135, which makes sense. Like, shouldn't this angle and this angle be the same? Yeah, they should. And then the last one they gave us, so we're just going to write another 90. You know you're done because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 angles, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 angles. That's how I know I got all of them. Okay, so there's 2 halves to this, or 2 answers to this question. First, I wanted to know what is b, and then I wanted to know what are the angles. All right, you do have ones just like that on your quiz. But that is just the short version of how to do this lesson. Remember, I guess the big thing you really need to remember is you just do the opposite of the order of operations to get b by itself. All right, guys, take good notes.